So in 1999, Paul Thorson was invited and part of a Centers for Disease Control program that invited foreign scientists to come learn research, and I guess the CDC's push for globalization of medicine, where the influence of the U.S. government and healthcare globally. So he was one of those students. Well, one of those doctors at the time. What was interesting was right at the same time there was the one meeting at Simpson Wood, and Thomas Verstraeten showing a 6-to-1 ratio of yes, thimerosal causes autism. And at Simpson Wood, as we had learned later from Bobby Kennedy's article in Rolling Stone magazine, it was incredible that the CDC went, instead of dealing with the issue of thimerosal and removed it completely, they then went on a scavenger hunt to find a database of existing healthcare data around the world, Japan, Denmark, and a few other places, and they needed to go back test studies. Why Denmark was very interesting because Denmark in 1992 had banned thimerosal completely. They have removed it from the vaccines. There's no more thimerosal in the vaccines in Denmark. So that is interesting. So they thought if they go back and test it and show no association between thimerosal out and no autism, everything would be fine. But lo and behold, they realized they had a problem. So they hired Paul Thorson, who somehow wiggled his way to the top of the CDC, became a boyfriend-girlfriend with Diana Shandell, who's one of the epidemiologists for the CDC, even though her background's in anthropology. And she would end up helping him write the grants that secured money through Thorson's University, which is called Aarhus University in Denmark. And they were on their way. So he would get $8 million up front for 2000 to 2004, and then he would renew in 2005 for another $8 million. And that began the study. So what they ended up doing at Aarhus University was they produced 5 studies. These are not clinical trials. This is not vax versus unvax. This is not placebo. This is going back and back testing old historical data in a healthcare registry that Denmark has on all their citizens. And the problem is to have the parameters changed in 1995. Autism is not really diagnosed until 4 years old. So when you're looking at lower ages, or if you drop a number from 2 to 6 and you drop it to 1 to 6, of course that's going to dilute the actual study. So like every other study they did with the Thompson study to the Thorson studies, they changed the parameters. So once you change the parameters of the scope on a study, it basically invalidates it. What was more interesting was when I went to Denmark and I eventually got through the principal investigator, the PI, Christian Madsen, who was a PhD candidate at the time. Madsen flat out said Thorson did 0 work on the studies. Why is that important? It's important because the Vancouver Protocol is an international study on international consortium on how peer-reviewed studies have to be credited. Like a film credit in Hollywood, you start in a movie, you're a screenplay writer. Well, in peer-reviewed studies, you've had to participate in some version. The first name on a study is always a PI. The last name is something else, and Thorson always had him at the end, and he would have to do more than raise money. It wasn't about raising money. It was about doing actual work on a specific study. And in 2 of Madsen's cases, Thorson did no work. He didn't review the paper. He didn't comment on it, didn't edit it. And Madsen brought this to the top at Aarhus University, and a 29-year-old PhD candidate who wanted to get his PhD, obviously, was told to shut up and stand down, literally. When I went back to the university and confronted the new dean of health there, he says, no, we don't see a problem with it. But there should be a problem with it because if you remove Thorson's name from these 2 studies, those 2 studies would have to be redacted because they were published under false pretenses.